Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the January 29th Oklahoma City Planning Commission meeting. If you have cell phones, pagers, or similar devices, if you would either turn those off or silence them now, we would appreciate that courtesy. And with that, we'll go to approval of the December 11th minutes, Commissioners. Okay, I cannot vote on that. We have a motion and a second, so cast your votes, and those minutes are approved.
Buck's not here.
Okay, take Buck off. Still have 5. They're approved. And second, the January 15th minutes.
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Cast your votes, and they're approved. And we'll go to the continuance requests. Aubrey?
We have 2 uncontested requests for continuance. Item B19, which is PUD 1568, to defer that to February 26th. And item B20, which is C 6539, to defer to March 26th.
Anyone come today to address us on either of those items?
Move the uncontested continuance.
We have a motion and a second to approve the continuances. Cast your votes. Those are approved.
We also have 2 new continuance requests for item B17, PUD 1567, to defer to February 12th, and item B18, PUD 1571, to defer to February 26th.
Again, the same question. Anyone come to talk to us about items 17 or 18 on our agenda today?
Move the additional request.
We have a motion and a second to approve the additional continuances. Cast your votes. Those are approved. Are there any continuance requests from the public today? Okay, we'll go to the consent docket.
There are 3 items on the consent docket. Item 1 is CE 898, to close a portion of the drainage easement located north of Northwest 178th and east of North Portland. Item 2 is CE 900, to close a portion of Northeast 52nd Street located east of Martin Luther King Avenue and south of Remington Place. And item 3 is ABC 826 for an ABC 2 overlay to the PUD 134 district located at 14221 North Penn.
Anyone here today to talk to us about those items just read, 1 through 3 on our agenda?
Move approval of the items on the consent docket.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Items requiring separate vote. Item 4 is C 6691, the final plat of Country Grove Estates Edition 1, located east of Morgan Road and north of Memorial.
Chairman and Commissioner, I'm Lex Godania with MGR Inc., representing the applicant. There was an requirement by fire department last time on January 15 meeting. We have taken care of it, and the requirement was that there were more lots and they wanted to take 4 lots off, and we have done that. And I agree with the remaining all the T's.
And no one has signed up, Commissioners.
Move approval of final plat.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 14, or 4, excuse me. Cast your votes, and it's approved. Thank you.
Item 5 is C 4855, extension of the preliminary plat of Deerfield Estates located south of Southeast 74th and west of Choctaw Road.
Good afternoon. Kendall Dillon with Craft & Toll, representing the applicant, and this is obviously just an extension of preliminary plat. You will notice that variance is required because this will be our second extension on this. It was a large plat, 295 acres, and then they've done large sections. Last one was over 100 acres, so it's taken them a while. So we'd ask for your approval.
So this is a variance and will require 6 votes for approval.
Okay, but I have a question on this, and that well, 2 questions actually. What's the purpose of the only one 5-year extension? Is that just to move things along and
I would assume.
then you're out of there? And the second question I have is, does this plat require common areas?
Well, I think
I don't see any.
Right. I think if you look at it in regards to the relationship of the density versus, on a rural estates, I think it adheres to that. I think you got the sliding scale on the density versus common area in rural estates.
I guess my question is related to
Is that right?
the year when you first came in, that was approved in 1999.
Right.
The open space common area subdivision regulations weren't in effect. You didn't have to do that in 1999. And that's why my curiosity is that this extension comes on, and we're still dealing with. This is this is all questions. I don't know the answer, but when this is approved for the extension, do the new subdivision regulations come in and take effect at this extension time?
We would look at that since this is a rural subdivision, no. If it were an urban subdivision, the Planning Commission has asked us to apply those new rules as new final plats come in.
So
But
whatever we have today
that
applies.
If this was an urban subdivision, yes. This is a rural subdivision, 1 to 3 acres.
That was my other, my
That's the
first
distinction.
question. Is it required? And your answer is it's not required
No.
for this rule. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. No one signed up, and this is a variance.
No one, do we have any protests?
No one signed up.
This is consistent with pretty much what's going on in that area, and I would move to approve the variance.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 5, which is a variance. Cast your votes. And it's approved. Thank you.
And I'll approve make a motion to approve the application.
Okay? Cast your votes, and the extension's
Thank you.
approved as well. Thank you.
Item 6 is C-6697, the final plat of the Preserve at Parkside, Phase 2, located east of Meridian and north of Southwest 134th.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chris Anderson with SMC Consulting Engineers representing the developer. We've read the staff report and agree with the TEs and just request approval of the plat this afternoon.
Again, no one has signed up.
I'm confused about this. You're agreeing with TE, so you are going to grant the aviation easement?
Yes.
My other question, in addition to that, is that to think that the airport people don't want you to build where this is AE1, and you're going to build there.
Well, in this particular phase, we're not. This particular phase is in the AE2, not in the AE1. Phase 3 will have some area that's in AE1, and that was approved in the initial PUD application that another engineer did. So we just continuing on from that original approval.
Let me see.
This was all discussed back when they did the preliminary plat.
Your stuff to the east,
Yes.
and whether or not, what is this, a preliminary plat? Final?
This is the final today.
And so but when you come in with a final plat on the east part, what happens? Can you build there?
Yes, and that was the discussion that was had with the preliminary plat when we brought that in, that zoning already approved that residential in that area.
Even though the airport doesn't want you to build there? I don't understand it.
Well, I don't remember when this was zoned. The preliminary plat was apparently back in 11. But obviously at the zoning stage, decided to go against the airport, if you will, and at the preliminary plat stage.
So we just ignored the airport?
Well, sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't.
We did on
if
a
you
big
recall,
one.
we built a city park down there against at least my objection because it was too close to the airport, but yeah.
It is a really nice city park, though.
It is a great park.
It is.
Just in the wrong place.
Okay, no one has signed up, Commissioners.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 6. Cast your votes, and it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 7 is SP 473 for a special permit to allow mining and processing of minerals and raw materials in the AA district located at 1100 North Cimarron Road.
Good afternoon. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant, who is also with me here today, and Jason Spencer. What we have is a special permit to allow us to mine, and what that means is nothing more than it will allow us to sell dirt from the site. It's an interesting function within the code. If we were developing this land today, we wouldn't have to have a special permit to move the dirt and to sell it. But because we're not, it needs a special permit. When you look at where we are, it's zoned AA, but within the comp plan, it's called for it to be industrial. No matter what we have to do on this site, we're going to have to remove some dirt. So what this will allow is for us to ready the site for development when and if that time comes. There are a handful of protest letters I believe you've been provided. My client and the engineer did meet with the protesters on several occasions. There were concerns with hours of operation and access and what was going to happen with the streets. What we've agreed to do is we will only have one access point, and it will be up here on the north end of our site on Cimarron. We believe that will limit any impact to 10th Street or any of the neighbors over here. Obviously, what that will do is force the traffic go up on Cimarron and hit I-40. We've also met with Public Works and come to an agreement, and this is related to TE number 5, as to maintenance of Cimarron from our site to the highway. Mr. Brummett, myself, and our respective clients were in the meeting. We agreed to maintain that as it goes up to I-40 as necessary. I met with staff right before the hearing, and I think what we would ask is to define it as Public Works would like it to be defined between now and City Council. But I'm comfortable with that. My client is, and I believe Public Works is too. Like I said, we will fix potholes as they happen, and because it's a special permit, the city will have the ability to have some teeth with what we're agreeing to do. Additionally, there were concerns about safety with the equipment being out there. The site will be gated. It'll be controlled at all times by our folks. And dust. We will have water trucks out there to ensure that that is not a problem as much as we can. And the street, and I think that was probably the main issue, and I'm confident that only having the one access point up on the north end of this site will force all the trucks to go to the highway, thereby not interfering with the residential to the east or to the south. Buck is not here today, but I did meet with him and discuss this with him. On TE number 2, he wanted the hours of operation to be 8 to 5 in both summer and winter months. My client is fine with that. Buck did want us to limit this to be prohibited on Saturdays. My client would like the ability to be able to sell dirt on Saturdays, as his competitors are able to do, but it was Buck's desire that it be prohibited on Saturday, but my client would like that. Other than that, we do agree with TEs number 1, 3, and number 4. And we're here to answer any questions.
David, you mentioned that this is basically get the dirt off, preparation for development. I believe then you said if and when it is developed. I look at my staff report, I don't see a term on this special permit. How long do you need it?
Oh, we'd ask for 10 years, but we would hope it would be done well before then. So much of it depends on what projects are going on and who's wanting to buy the dirt.
Years is a long time, especially for that area of the city. What if we did a shorter period?
We do 5.
Do a 5, and if you have to come back, then come back.
We can do that.
My staff report tells me several things that I think are significant to my decision-making. One is that the final grading will maintain the current drainage patterns, that there's no pits or subsurface mining. I'm not quite sure I understand what that means. I mean, if you're not going to dig down below grade, is that what it says?
I believe so. And on the drainage issue, what my client has agreed to do, some of the neighbors voiced some concern that there are some pre-existing drainage problems. We are going to grade a bit of a berm almost in hopes that that will help any pre-existing drainage problems. But our grading will not have a negative impact on drainage patterns. But no, there's no subsurface. It's not mining like you would consider digging down below the surface.
And then it says that reclamation of each completed phase. Do I have something that tells me what the phases are or how that's going to work? But it says that reclamation of each completed phase will occur prior to the completion of the next phase. Would you be comfortable with language that said something like it would be done as soon as possible, but certainly no later than the completion of the next phase?
Yeah, let me have Mr. Spencer address that.
Yes, good afternoon. Jason Spencer with Craft and Toll. Well, sorry, I don't have this on the board, but we've basically broken down the area into 4 phases. They're approximately range from about 20 to 24 acres apiece. So the intent is by phasing it that it limits the amount of ground that's torn up and exposed that can create erosion problems, dust problems, that kind of stuff. And so the verbiage basically as we've stated would be that once we're complete with a phase, we begin remediation, either sprigging or sodding, most likely Bermuda or something like that. We'll have to put some topsoil back down, and then that be completed before we can complete the next phase of grading. Basically, so we can start, but before that next phase is completed with grading, that this has been established, because it takes time for the grass to grow and be established.
Clearly, yes. And I would very much like to see the operation limited to weekdays as Buck requested, and also I would like to see the term limited to 5 years. I think that's a significant amount of time, and if you need to come back, then you can show us what good neighbors you've been and how it hasn't been a problem. And
Are there protests?
Yes, just wait.
We would be willing to give up Saturday and have it consistent with the TE here, other than, like I said, the 8 instead of 7.
So basically, you're in agreement with TE2 if we leave the hours of operations 8 to 5 year-round?
Correct.
David, are you saying that you're only going to have allow trucks to go north, no trucks to go south?
Well, we're going to encourage everything to go north. There would be nothing we could do to prohibit it, but if you look at this area, it wouldn't make any sense for them to go anywhere but north.
Why couldn't you prohibit it?
Well, because a person can drive where they're going to drive.
Well, but if you've got heavy trucks going out of there, and are you going to maintain everything along that road then?
Yes, from the north side of our property up to the highway.
Okay, what about south?
If our trucks cause it, then we would, but I can't
So will
imagine.
you agree to that?
Well, that's what we
Nick?
Well, I'm having trouble here. The public road.
I understand that.
So-
But when you've got dump trucks and you got semis, I've had the experience, so I know what kind of problems those trucks will cause on a public highway, and when they do cause that kind of a problem, he's already agreed to maintain the road to the north. Why not to the south?
Jim, I got that. But what I'm saying is, I'm a trucker. I'm pulling in here to buy dirt, to haul it to my customer. If I get to that gate and they tell me the interstate's to the north, and that's probably where I want to go anyway, but if I want to turn right and go south down Cimarron Road, I've got a licensed vehicle and it's a public road.
I understand that.
Prohibit me from
What
doing
kind
that.
of public road is it? It's a
two-lane
rural
section line
public
road.
It's a rural public road.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and a rural public road is not made for that kind of traffic.
Short of a bridge with a weight limit,
I can drive on it, though. I understand that.
Well, what we're willing, we'll talk with Public Works. I'm hesitant to agree to something to the south because I don't see truck traffic going to the south, and that, I guess that becomes a, no, we saw somebody go south, you need to go fix that pothole. Public Works was comfortable with our agreement, but we're happy to go back and visit with them about that issue.
We're going to actually have some language that we're going to propose for TE5 as we go along. We do have people who have signed up too, so let's hear from the protesters. First one I have is James Gill. And there are 3 more people following you, Mr. Gill, and I would ask that as additional people come forward, they provide us with new information so that they don't tell us the same thing you already have.
Certainly.
So give us your name and address, please, for the record.
My name's James Gill. I live just to the south of where this development is taking place. My address is 15330 Northwest 10th Street, just near the southwest corner of the property there. Many of the comments that have already been submitted by Dr. Curtis Brown and Tom and Mike and Tommy Sue Fisher, I agree with. Things related to health, property value. For longer the duration, it's a longer period of time when the property there is actually in a diminished value. I'm glad to see that you're talking about the topic of the duration and time of this, on how long this should happen. It's 10 years is a long time. I'm 62, almost 62. 10 years from now I'll be 72, and I don't think I want to look at mining for 10 years. One thing is that also I'm glad you're talking about the county roads not having weight limits. There's a bridge to the south. If you go and look underneath the bridge, you'll find it full of rusted out holding area that will not support a truck. I worry about the vehicles even driving over it. Plus emergency access is necessary on Cimarron Road. Other items is related to a question that I included in some of my paperwork on what's the risk mitigation approach you're going to have in the event you hit a gas line. There are gas recovery lines that go through that area. If you look in your attachment that was provided on the map, you can see that there is a gas well to the south of the property between Tommy Sue Fisher and Curtis Brown's property. There's another gas well located just to the north of it. I would assume that pipeline, which is a recovery line which would not be scented, goes right through that property. And I worry that if something happens, it will be very difficult to respond to an emergency situation because you don't have the normal considerations for gas handling. Other than that, I'd like to give some time for the other people to also talk. So,
thank you for coming down.
Any questions?
Quick question. I've reviewed your email, which was very well done.
Thank you.
But I note that it was sent to Sarah Welsh in our planning office September 4th of last year. So this has been going on for an appreciable period of time. My question is, with all these detailed recommendations, suggestions you have in this, I assume you've had time to meet with the applicant and discuss these items?
With Jason, this information was shared with him and Harold Pogue. In fact, when I did the minutes up from the meeting, I confirmed with Jason and Harold that I was trying to accurately represent what I understood was said.
Okay.
Yeah, there was actually a response, I think, in the email chain that indicated that occurred.
That's what I was getting from that. I just wanted it on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Peggy Lowe. Again, if you'd pull that down so we can hear you and give us your name and address, please.
I'm Peggy Lowe. We live at 508 North Cimarron Road, just south of that. We have my thoughts may be very random. We have a 20-foot pipeline, main line that runs.
Sorry, I can't hear you very well. Can you just...
We have a main
better.
pipeline that runs right under the fence of our property with the farm. It's that line right there on that diagram, which we discovered when we built our house almost 30 years ago. That really, it's not in line with that, so that's not. And my main concern just with this project is the road, the potholes. Everybody in this, when they used to have the pothole hotline, they all know me personally. And I would ask that instead of just from their gate to I-40, that they would be responsible for Cimarron Road all the way south to Mustang. We don't know where the dirt will be sold to. We don't know if they will take it on Northwest 23rd and dump it where they're building the Frisco Road interchange. We don't know if they'll go 10th Street. All of the neighbors, all the farmers use 10th Street to get to Garth Brooks. We don't always go to the highway. So thinking these dirt people are going to go to the highway is not totally reasonable to me. And we have enough potholes just with automobiles. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like with big trucks. So I would just ask that he would be responsible, or the city would put some provision in to be responsible for 10th Street and Cimarron South to Mustang, maybe. I mean, where's the dirt going to be sold to that the truckers are going to have to drive to, is my question. And
We don't have an answer for that, I'm sorry. We don't know where it's going to be sold. They don't know either, probably, who's going to buy the dirt.
12 feet down is a lot of dirt. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ray Gatto or Gaddy, I'm not sure if I've... Sorry for mispronunciation. If you'd give us your name and address for the record.
That's quite okay. It's an Italian name. It's hard to pronounce sometimes. Raymond Gatto, 1000 North Cimarron Road, Yukon, Oklahoma. I'm on the southeast corner of Northwest 10th and Cimarron Road. I'm right there on the corner. And the concerns for me, when I bought the land, built the house, it was agriculturally built for 5-acre lots for farming and residential. And bringing in a mining situation, we built that house on the assumption of retirement and the view of what we're looking at, the landscapes. And most of my neighbors are the same way. We bought our houses because we wanted to be out in the country, so we invested highly in that. And I had to go a step further, and I think Dr. Brown also pointed out that his sons have asthma and suffer from that. I built my house on the same principle. I have no carpet in my house. I have special heating, special insulation, because my son suffered so badly from asthma throughout the years. Saying all that, they've been farming that land, and even when they farm, the dust from the north coming to the south fills my house. And it's a continual battle cleaning and keeping my house clean in that aspect. So considering a mining operation for 10 years, and I understand, I appreciate you reducing it down to 5 years, but I would even think that 3 years would be acceptable in my opinion. The second thing I'd like to address is the airport's on that property across from on the west side of that. That is an emergency evacuation route. All airports, that's an emergency evacuation route. And I don't know all the laws that involved with that, but that road has to be maintained to a certain standard. All the residents along there use that to get to I-40.
Now, are you speaking of Cimarron Road when you say that?
Cimarron Road, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So everybody along 10th Street, south of the zoning of the plot that they're wanting to mine, all the residents, that's our emergency evacuation route. So with trucks merging on and off, and I know we talked with Mr. Pogue and his representative about building a ramp on there, but who's going to hold everybody accountable for what they're going to do? Does the city, does the ordinance, once it's done, I know I'm in construction myself. I appreciate what they're doing. I respect he bought the land to make money, but in the same token, it's disrupting our life, our income of what we bought that land for. And we're trying to protect what we have invested our livelihood into, our way of life. Nobody wants to look at semis 24 hours a day when I got a beautiful green wheat field that I've been looking at for the last 7 years. And I appreciate the steps that he's doing, but in the same token, I got to disagree with this. You're going to strip off 12 foot of soil, the noise pollution from I-40. When the wind blows out of south, we hear all the trucks and semis going up and down the road. And I know down I-40 they've been putting 12-foot barriers up to block the sounds for residential people. You take 12 foot of land off, I just can't imagine the noise that's going to be coming over across there from the wind carrying it from all those trucks. It's a quiet residential neighborhood. I'd like to see it stay that way. And if not, if you agree to allow this to go through, I would respectfully ask that you minimize it down to 3 years. I know the proposal was 10 and then down to 5, but I think 3 years you could do a whole lot. And he talked about going to a different phase of building houses or sod farm. I don't know what he was planning on doing. We never got a direct answer as far as what he was planning to do. But everything's set up on 5-acre tracts out there. It's zoned for 5 acres. I would like to see it stay that way. So if that's any kind of further consideration. And as far as the truck traffic, being a truck driver myself, hauling crude oil through the years, I no longer do that, but I have done it. Like you said, every road is accessible. But we have 3 bridges that are deeply in need of repair as it is. The one to the south on Cimarron Road, the whole outer beam is completely rotted out. The 2 on 10th Street are so bad that you got to go over them 5 miles an hour because the bump will actually airborne you. Now we have, when traffic's bad or there's an accident on I-40, they route the semis through there and the trucks. And it's a very dangerous situation. The state police monitor that road. It's a 35-mile-an-hour road. Most of the trucks are doing 40 and 50 down there. We have dogs, we have chickens and farm animals that our kids play along the road. They play soccer there. I'm concerned about that. As far as the fencing being put up that they talked about, the water runoff with the creek. I have flooding in my back property on the south side. If you can see the creek pattern, it floods pretty bad right now. So if there's any silt runoff into that, I can't imagine what it's going to do to my property. It's going to raise the flood level up also. So all those things I'd like to bring to your attention. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. One thing I'll point out to you is they're not rezoning the land. They're asking for special permits. So
right.
It continues at this point in time to be zoned for minimum 5-acre lots.
Right.
So that's not before us today.
Right.
If they wanted to change that, they would have to come in with a rezoning request later, and that's...
I understand you clearly on that.
Okay.
I just know the next phase, what's going to happen next if this is approved at this point, what they're going to propose probably the second phase.
They may. We don't know.
Yeah.
We'll have to consider that when they do.
I know. I'm just planting that seed in your mind.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Katie Harris. You have something new for us?
I honestly can just say that I do agree with everything they've said. I'm sorry. Honestly, I can just say that I do agree with each one of them and generally everything they've said. I would put special emphasis to, like he said, the bridges. There are some very small bridges. When we've gotten water, they have flooded almost over the bridges, things like that. The natural creeks are spring-fed as well as, like I said, they catch a lot of water as is. So I would say they'd have to pay extra special attention to those things and flooding the properties around them, the traffic and the roads. So.
Well, before you step away, give us your name and address for the record, please.
Katie Harris, and we have an empty lot that's not legally addressed just south on 10th Street of just the southeast corner of the end of their property. The address where you sent the notice is our home address, about 2 miles away.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners?
A question for Jason, I guess. When we were talking about the remediation plan, you were talking about 4 tracks. And as this was described to me before, and again, confirmed to Commissioner Powers, we're not really mining, we're not going to dip down. We're taking it off the top, leveling.
That's correct.
If you will. So can you give us an idea, and I know it's not pool table flat out there with a point on it, but can you give us an idea of how much you're going to cut, what's coming off the top?
Sure. And the site, basically, if you go out there and look at it, there's a large hill that's on there, and so that's what we're cutting down, and that's how we'll maintain the current drainage pattern, so there won't be a digging a hole in the ground, a pond, or a pit, or anything like that. From the top of that hill, our deepest cut is somewhere in the vicinity of 12 feet. Then, obviously, as you get away from the hill, it gets less and less from there. We're looking at about 700,000 cubic yards that could be generated.
700,000 yards.
Yes.
That answers my question.
Sure.
And,
Anybody else? Aubrey, you have some
Yes.
language to suggest?
Yes, on TE number 5, since there might be a few things that you want to iron out on the agreement for how to maintain the property, we might suggest modifying that to read, the applicant will reach a written agreement on how to maintain the road, and whether or not you all specify it's Cimarron or more, from the construction entrance on the property north to the I-40 on-ramp before it goes to City Council.
We agree with that.
We just want some of the terms like maintenance defined as opposed to left for interpretation.
Mr. Chairman, may I weigh in on this application?
Of course.
After listening to the applicant and council, and then also the people that live in the area that have appeared to protest this, I'm convinced that whatever infrastructure is there is inadequate for the purpose that you want the special permit to do. And Jim, I think you're right about the condition of the road. It is a highway, but there's potholes, even though you say you're going to maintain it. We've encountered this problem before with other applications about truck drivers going from one way to the other, and there's no control over dump trucks going just only north. They could go south, east, west. It's completely incompatible with the area, having an excavation process like this going on. The peace of mind, dust pollution, noise pollution, etc., in a totally agricultural area. There's not anything but 5-acre AA zoning for agricultural purposes, residential, in any place in the area. And then the possibility of the Shell Creek getting silt built up and then causing whatever flood issues there might be, and the noise and dust pollution, all of those things, I'm convinced that the protesters have the edge here, and to make things started, I move to deny the application.
Hold on one second.
well,
Hold on one second.
Wait, David.
wait a minute, David. Now I'm confused. Let's buy into all, and I heard all those concerns, and they're valid concerns. Every one of them I can't disagree with any of them. The problem I'm having on hearing this application, if I understand it properly, and Dan, I'm going to need your help here. If I understand it properly, if this applicant withdraws this application, walks away, and does not sell the dirt, he can give the dirt away, and they can take 700,000 cubic yards of dirt and haul it down these roads without any agreement that we're striking here and without a special permit, and just go about their business.
I'll defer to JJ.
Well, that's my one understanding, if that's correct. My second understanding, if I understand what the applicant said, was if they were developing this at this time and they wanted to flatten their hill, again, they'd just come in, flatten the hill, haul the dirt off, right down the road, and we wouldn't have a special permit, we wouldn't be maintaining the road, and we wouldn't have hours of operation constraint.
That's correct.
So, I'm not trying to suggest that the applicant run amok here, but it would appear, Bob, that they're, and there's a profit motive here. They want to sell their dirt. I got it. But if they were developing the land, they could sell the dirt, couldn't they?
I believe so.
So, from going to mining
There's a
dirt
significant
today to
difference.
tomorrow, I say I'm going to get this whole 120 acres ready for flat level 5-acre
But a
tracts.
significant difference is between an operation that starts in phases to whack off 12 feet of dirt and you sell it. That's one operation. That's what your special permit is for. If you're going to develop this land 5-acre tracts, then you go in and do a 5-acre tract, and so it may not be on a hill, it may be someplace else. You can't tell me that this same operation would occur if they're developing this as a 5-acre tract, rural residential
Well, I
development.
can't, because I'm going to develop it in phases, just like Jason said, where 4 24-acre lots. I'm going to develop my first 24 acres. I'm going to develop 5 lots there, and then I'm going to move to the next 5.
But the difference is that sporadically you're developing this 5-acre tract rural. This is a major full-tilt operation involving a giant amount of dirt being moved by big, giant dump trucks. And that's what I think we need to be cautious about, is approving this in a completely rural area. This is a business operation. This is, 8 to 5, 5 days a week. You're going to have these dump trucks going up and down, and bulldozers and smoke and
That's incorrect.
everything.
It's not 8 to 5, 5 days a week. It is only when there's a project that requires the dirt. It is intermittent at best. And there's a 5-year time limit that's been agreed upon. If my client wanted to develop these 120 acres, he could take 20 years to do it, take the same amount of dirt, but there wouldn't be the teeth here to make sure the roads are maintained, to make sure that the dust.
I know, and now I do know what your argument is, but your argument is related to a rural residential 5-acre tract development, which is consistent with what the neighbors have. There's 5 acres. So I've got to whack off some dirt to do that. Well, they do that, and then they build a house. I'm just thinking that this is a major, full-tilt operation, and I can't support it. I think it's not compatible with the neighborhood, even though I agree with what you just said after being enlightened.
Well, we've just approved final plats in phases. Development is phased all the time, and we're accustomed to seeing that at every meeting that we have. It's just not unusual. And I don't know where else you would go to obtain dirt other than, you're not going to do it in an urban area. It's all built up. So
I see of this is it's for a specified period.
I agree.
And we're getting some trade-offs. We're getting road maintenance and things like that. Without this, I see this being a protracted deal that, first gentleman that spoke said, I don't want to be looking at it in 10 years. Well, if you just took those 4 phases and did them 1 phase every 5 years, that'd be 20 years.
Right.
And they could do it by right. I'm as troubled by that as I am with some of these other things here. Now, I'm not saying this is a great deal, but if you look at what they can already do by right, it would appear that if we had a limited time frame and some trade-offs, that's a better deal than not.
Anyone else?
I guess my little 2 cents. I actually do agree with Jim's observations about the road, and if you're comfortable with the language on TE5 about reaching a written agreement, I'm not sure I understand a written agreement with whom. Is it with the city?
Yes.
and I think maybe the neighbors ought to be included in that process. I do have issues with these large construction projects. That's not exactly what this is, and the damage that they do to streets and roads, and our inability, I guess, to really monitor that and impact it. And I think we ought to be sort of more involved in that as a city, because, you know, the damage that is done by these kind of large trucks and equipment is astonishing at times. But I am also persuaded by Nick's observations. I do think that in some ways we have an opportunity here to exert some controls that we wouldn't have otherwise, that will actually end up being beneficial to the surrounding property owners, for whose concerns I have the utmost sympathy. But I think in some ways it's almost a better deal for them to have this property prepared for development under a special permit, as long as it is limited in its scope, both in terms of hours of operation and in terms of years, and as long as there is some control over the streets and roads and the damage that's done to them.
Well, and I think, too, that if this agreement is written well and honored by, obviously, the applicant and monitored by the city, that this may be ultimately a model for what we do with other similar projects where we haven't had any particular guidance in the past or control over what happens to the infrastructure.
Well, you know, I agree with basically everything that's been said, but the difference here that I see, if I was going to develop that piece of land, I would find something to do with the dirt on the development, and that's what happens. You know, hauling all that dirt off of there, it's, you know, and I know it's a special use, but, and when I said a while ago I experienced that, I've got a farm up in Logan County. They were building 3 oil well pads. The road on the north side of my property is paved. They ran it for 3 months, and in that 3-month period, they did all kinds of damage to the road from the highway 3 miles west. County commissioner got with them and said, "Hey guys, we got a cough up. You got to do something. You got to help me with this road." And they did. I don't know the legal part of it. I don't know how it came about, but I do know that happened. And I do know that those semis will tear up a county road, you know, in a New York minute.
Okay, well, earlier, Commissioner Bright made a motion for denial. I did not hear a second. Is there a second? Is there a different motion?
Well, we need to vote, so I'll move for approval.
With the modification of TE2 to 8 to 5.
And no Saturday operation?
And all, as written, Monday through Friday.
And limitation of the term to 5 years. Modification of TE5 to the language suggested by the planning department. I think that's all.
And the applicant's good with all that?
Yes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 7 as conditioned. Cast your votes. It does not pass today.
Can we send it to council with a 4-2 and just reflect it like that and no recommendation?
You'd have to get a vote for no recommendation.
Well,
I guess we'll be back first time.
Since we're so limited today, we're missing a third of our contingent. I'm not terribly comfortable sending it to council without a recommendation. So can we bring it back in a couple weeks?
Don't think we have a choice.
I guess you don't.
Okay, for those of you who came down today, it takes a majority of 5 commissioners to approve or deny an application, and the vote was 4-2, so that means no action was taken today. It will be heard in 2 weeks. Item 8.
Mr. Chairman, before we go to item 8, if I could make a request of staff, the motion we had made some modifications to TE2 and TE5. We could get those incorporated into, and we also added one. We can get all that into next staff report. It would help. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Nick.
In fact, I would go a little further than that. If we could get a written agreement hammered out between now and the next time we meet, that would be nice too.
Even better.
If we could actually fulfill the promise of TE5, that would be lovely.
Okay.
Item 8.
Item 8, PC 10406 to rezone 12900 Southeast 29th Street from AA to RA.
Good afternoon, Mark Grubbs, 1819 South Morgan Road. On behalf of the applicant, what you have before you today is a request for a rezoning and an accompanying preliminary plat. We would ask for your approval. These are the accompanying plat are all 1 acre tracts. Are we happy to answer any questions?
You have no water and no sewer here, right?
That's correct, sir.
And yet you're slightly over a quarter of a mile from water, and you're still going to run on wells.
The only water that's near us is Midwest City water.
That's one of the things that when I talked to Mr. Bryant, Joel, I'll talk to you about maybe you need to come up. Joel, would you come up? When we had conversation about this 30 days ago, I asked you to visit with Midwest City about the possibility of water to that side. I mean, it's across the street. Have you done that? Has there been did you pursue that in any way?
Yes, we did.
Okay. What was the outcome?
Iffy at best was our interpretation.
Okay. I'm for this project, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a way to get water there, even possibly sewer. And I'm going to say this very gingerly because there's some things that are in works along Southeast 29th Street. And I'm not going to say exactly what they are, but I don't think I can say what they are. But I think this project would be more beneficial to you, to us, and everything else if we could get city water there, either from the city of Oklahoma City or from the city of Midwest City. And I don't see why the city of Oklahoma City can't have the same agreement that we have with Edmond with Midwest City. If we've got a project in Oklahoma City, Edmond's got water close, there's an agreement that they just almost like if it was Oklahoma City water. I've talked to Councilman White about this. In fact, I just got off the phone when the meeting started.
It's how it was.
And he feels like that there's a good possibility of something happening along that line pretty soon. And I think it would be to your benefit if we would delay this project for at least a month and see if we can't work something out there. And rather than having 1 acre lots, you could have half-acre lots. Now, I don't know whether that will work for you or not, but I'm going to ask you to continue this thing for 30 days and see if we can't work something out along that line. I'm really an advocate of this project because even if it's 1 acre tracts, we got fire protection right across the road. We can hook up to their Midwest Cities hydrants or whatever we need to do. And if I'm not mistaken, there's one right across the street, almost due north of where your street go into that subdivision. So I'm asking you if you would consider delaying this for a month and see what we can't work out.
Jim, I'm not sure that looking at the current master plan and what we see for the prospects of the future master plan, that bringing municipal water into the area won't change the character.
There's something in the middle that's different than the city doing it, okay? When I talked to Councilman White today, that's what he suggested that, would work. Maybe if we could, get something going along that line. So,
Nick?
I don't disagree with Jim about the continuance, but since we're on this, I have a couple of questions about the site itself. When I look at it, it looks like we're carving 20 acres right out of the middle of what on my staff report here says is Hans Rasmussen tracks. And we have clear area to the east and west of these tracks. Do we control all that land or just this 20 acres? And all the rest of that adjoining land is it owned by one person individual 5-acre lots, or what is it?
I think it's owned by separate people.
Mark, we can't hear you if you're not at the microphone.
I'm sorry. We have two individuals that own the 10-acre, each of the 10-acre tracts that make up the 20. They're partners on this.
Developing. Okay.
And that's what made the project come together. And then the outside of that is not any ownership of ours.
Okay, the east and west boundaries then are made up of 5-acre tracts up and down.
It's zoned AA, yeah.
Yeah. And that, in addition to what Jim was saying, the question I would raise now is this a 1-acre tract development compatible with what's around it? And where Jim's going is yes, it might be. It might even be compatible with half-acre lots if some other things happen. But right now, I just, with this application before us today, I would have concerns about compatibility as well as the lack of water and sewer.
Well, I think he's suggesting that it's it's even applicable for more dense areas. So I would question why it wouldn't be okay for 1-acre tracts. And if water was brought into that site, the project's not feasible unless you go to half-acre tracts.
One of the main reasons is water. Water wells, I should maybe clarify that.
Yeah, I mean, you would have well and septic on the 1-acre tracts, but they would agree to sprinkle the houses just as.
No, I'm just saying that, that area, of course, we're blessed in that area to have the Garber-Wellington aquifer, which, is a big aquifer. It recharges real quick and all this, that, and the other. But there comes a point we're going to suck it dry. We've got people, we've got cities coming out in that area buying water rights, drilling deep water wells. What does that do to those residential water wells that are, 200, 225 foot deep? It sucks the water out of that aquifer. And, we just keep going with these 1 acre tracts and drilling more, putting more holes in the ground. And one of these days, we're going to look back and say, hey, there's, 3,000 houses out there without any water. And there's no source of water right now out there other than, in this area, other than Midwest City. That's a shame, because that's where the water comes from, the southeast part of the city, serving the rest of the city. And the southeast part of the city doesn't even have any city water. That's a shame.
Well, I don't think that Midwest City has any interest in serving commercial for the city of Oklahoma City.
Well,
because that's going to take away from their tax.
Let me just say that there can be a similar agreement that we have with Edmond, with Midwest City. Hopefully.
I think that partially makes Nick's case, which is just taking a little finger of land out of the middle of something that's not at all like what's proposed, and just sticking a little needle or finger down into a center of a quarter section and doing something dramatically different. And as Mark says, if you have municipal water, it's only economic for them if you go to half-acre lots, which alters the character of the area even more. And at least at this point, that's not compatible with the current master plan or what's proposed with the future master plan that's expected to be adopted this spring. So I would not at this point support this application as it's in front of us.
He's got a very similar application that we approved on Henny Road, just south of 29th Street.
Yeah, and
almost identical. The only difference is that it's private roads, not public roads.
This is private.
It says public. Are you going to do private roads?
Mark, let's go back. Let's get back on track here.
Yes, we're planning on private roads, gated community.
Let's get back on track for a moment. Commissioner Allen asked you if you would consider a 30-day continuum. Are you good with that or not good with that?
I think that we would ask that you vote on the items.
Okay.
And if we get a recommendation of denial, it would move forward to council.
Any protests, Mr. Chairman?
No one signed up.
I'm not going to vote against it, but I think you've already heard that there's not too many people on the Planning Commission today, and let's vote.
Well, I've expressed my concerns. I'm concerned about compatibility, concerned with the lack of water and sewer. I'm going to move for denial of the application.
I think that if we continue this and we come back in 30 days, we hear the same thing.
That's very true, but there's a good possibility it could swing the other way as well.
Well, I think you're going to get a continuance anyway, Mark. So,
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for denial. Cast your votes. You don't get either.
So
It's
now that
continued.
It's continued anyway.
Correct.
So you want to, so now we're going to continue for 30 days.
No, it'll be 2 weeks now.
Be 2 weeks unless you agree to 30 days.
You want to agree to 30 days? We'll agree to the 30 days.
Okay, thank you.
If you would, if you'll give me a call, I'll tell you a little bit more what's going on, okay?
You might want to tell us, too.
Well, I can't at this point, okay? There's another project that may be proposed, and it's going to be pretty quick, and supposedly it's going to have sewer and water.
Okay.
That's
Just hard for us to vote in a vacuum when there's a mystery out there.
Yeah.
We need a motion to extend the continuance for 30 days.
Second.
Okay, with a motion and a second to extend this 30 days, cast your votes, and it's approved. We'll see you in 30 days.
And item 9, continue for 30 days.
We'll continue that 30 days as well. So I'll take a motion on item 9, Commissioners. A motion is second to continue item 9 for 30 days. Cast your votes. And that's approved.
Item 10 is SPUD 800 to rezone 1725 Northwest 16th from NB and UD to SPUD 800.
Mr. Chairman, Richard Riggs. I'm appearing for the applicant. As you recall, this was continued from the meeting 2 weeks ago. We've met with the staff or talked with the staff. A number of changes have been made in the design statement, I think responsive to the comments that were made by the commission at the time. We have 2 minor suggestions, I believe minor suggestions, to the report that's in front of you that we've discussed with the staff and I understand has the staff's support. A number of the use categories were deleted from the previous application, as you see from the design statement. We would like the Commission's consideration of reinserting 2 of the categories that were deleted. One is library services. There's no anticipation of that use, but again, just trying to contemplate what potential might exist for the building. We think that would be appropriate, particularly in light of the fact that cultural facilities are already included. The other item we'd like to reinsert is murals, which is category 8250.16. That being a request that stems from the fact that there is currently a variance in place for this building that permits that very use, and we'd like to preserve that currently effective variance. The other thing that has been refined a bit from the report that you have in front of you is the specific location for which we're asking permission to engage in the alcoholic sales. I think the report shows a 2,000 square foot area in the lobby of the building. We've actually refined that to be even more specific, and it's now a 1,200 square foot area specifically in the lobby where we would request that these sales be permitted. And with those changes, we would request your consideration of the application.
Dan, I've got a question for you. We're considering an ABC3 overlay. It's for the Lyric Theater. It's in connection with performances that occur there. It's to occur only, as Mr. Riggs says, within a 1,200 square foot area. What happens if the ownership and use of the property changes?
If the ownership changes, it runs with the property. If the use changes, you can condition it to this use, but you can't condition it to this particular applicant.
Okay, so are we doing that in this case? Is what I want to make sure we are.
Make sure we
Conditioning it
are.
to the use?
Oh, yes, I think so. I was going to suggest, and if you're really willing to limit it to 1,200 square feet, that's fine with me. My suggestion was we have tied uses of spectator sports and general and restricted, limited to a theater, as it's shown on the top of page 3 of our staff report. My suggestion was going to be that we also limit drinking establishments, sit-down alcohol permitted, further limited to a theater. And If we do that, then I would have much less concern about the 8,500 square feet. I don't have any problem with people sitting in their seats drinking in the theater. It's not so much the square footage, it's as long as it is tied to the theater use. So if we limit that particular use limited to theater, just like we have limited spectator sports, then I would not have a problem with that. Murals is not eliminated on my staff report, so that's fine.
And that's my question. It said there's a number of changes, and this is for staff. My staff report that I have is virtually the same as we saw last time. I still have all the uses in it. So what uses are we? Under
the TEs, it shows, that laundry
We
list.
deleted everything on this page.
Yes,
Okay.
and it has really, really, really narrowed it.
I'm good with that. But then when we further limit, and this is, I'm not trying to play lawyer with a lawyer here, I'm a bean counter, but where we limit it to sales of beverage patrons attending live theater, film, presentation, and donor receptions, and other similar events conducted, and then it says at the property. Okay. Could that say conducted by Lyric?
No.
That's too restrictive, isn't it?
You can't restrict it to a particular applicant.
Okay. Yeah, it's the property. That was my own, I thought that was too restrictive. But just wanted to make sure.
Well, I agree with Janice that the TE that restricts it to the lobby only, I don't see really any purpose in restricting that just because of what the Lyric Theater may well do in that area. I'm not concerned at all now that the TEs delete all of the uses that property was subject to, and also I can't find where they have deleted murals. I think you're still in there.
That was deleted on the copy I received, and maybe that was inadvertent.
I think murals are still, you're still covered with murals.
Okay, that's fine.
But back to the point, and this is, I just drove down Northwest 23rd Street at the site of the construction of that bar that we've denied an application to that's going to operate until 2 in the morning, and just looked up and I said, these neighbors to the south, for the time being, but then when that fails, here comes Giant Cowboy Bar that has that ABC overlay stuck to it. And this is the issue of all of those uses, and you want to come in with an overlay. When you delete all those uses and tie it only to the theater functions of the property, I think that restricts it way, way good enough to where I do support that, and I would delete the TE that says the 8,500 square feet, through the lobby area. I would let you have the whole 8,500 feet.
Yeah, our intent is certainly any sales, there's actually been a design for where a station would be to permit the sales in the lobby, with anticipation that people could take drinks into the theater itself. So,
not if it's limited to those 1,200 square feet.
Well, we'd request then that we not be so limited. That's the point at which any sales would take place, but we wouldn't want to limit it to.
That's not what the language provided, but okay.
So
you have cup holders in your seats?
I don't believe it. No, we don't.
Cup holder. Well, you want to sit there and have your cocktail, but.
But you do understand that if you turn it into a library, you will not be able to serve alcohol there.
That's right.
You'll have to whisper.
Well, I'm going to move approval. Unless there's somebody here that has something to say.
No one signed up.
I'll be there.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 10, amending it to cover the entire site and reintroducing the use, libraries, et cetera.
And murals. If they were deleted.
Murals were.
I don't think they were deleted, but if they were,
yeah,
it's in there.
And again, limiting the use of drinking establishments, sit-down alcohol permitted to a theater.
And we have a second. Yes, sir. Sir?
Excuse me, may I ask a clarification of Ms. Powers' last statement? I just want to make sure I understand what's being proposed. The current design statement says that the only sale are sales of alcoholic beverage to patrons attending live theater, film, artistic presentations, and other donor receptions and other similar events. Does that address the concern, or were you suggesting any further limitation?
Well, if you look just above that, where it says drinking establishments, sit-down, alcohol permitted,
Yes.
that is a permitted use.
Correct.
And it says further limited to the 8,500 square foot space depicted on the site plan. And my suggestion was that we add to that sentence the language limited to a theater, so that the drinking establishment sit-down alcohol permitted use is tied to the theater use, just as we have tied spectator sports and entertainment to the theater use, both general and restricted.
I see. So the language I read would still generally be applicable
Yes,
to the theater
yes.
use. I think that's fine. Yes. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay. Again, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 11 is SPUD 801 to rezone 12100 North May from C3 to SPUD 801.
Good afternoon. Steve McCaleb for the applicant, 4800 North Lincoln Boulevard. We have consulted extensively with staff. They recommend approval. It's my understanding there's been no protests filed. We have also worked extensively with Commissioner Powers and Commissioner Gales. As you are aware, this SPUD will allow this mixed beverage club to be in North Park Mall, which currently has Rococo Restaurant and Shogun Steakhouse there who serve liquor. We've also added another limitation. One of the things that our client intends to have in its premises is an identification scanner. It's a commercially available identification scanner that identifies patrons and also provides an incident tracking system to heighten security. And we would like that to be in addition to the limitation in this particular SPUD.
Okay.
We sent notice to all the persons on the property owner list and met with them, the ones who wanted to participate on January 6th. Had a attendance of about 12 to 15 people. Whatever concerns they may have had, I think we've met them. I talked with the Vice President of the Quail Creek Homeowners Association on January 9th as well to discuss the situation. I'm available for any questions you may have.
No one has signed up, Commissioners. Nick?
Mr. Chairman, this is, if you look closely at the detail, this is a very detailed, very restricted operation. I believe it will be fine. There has been, Mr. McCaleb indicated, contact and discussions with the three surrounding homeowners associations. Today, immediately before the meeting, I received a call from someone, one of those positions, expressing concerns that they needed more information. They didn't have the information. Obviously, there's been a little bit of a disconnect on communication within the association. Mr. McCaleb has agreed that rather than continue this again, if we go ahead and hear it today, between now and council, they will get with those neighborhood associations and further explain the application. I believe when people see this application, I don't believe there will be any significant protest or any protest at all. With that and with the addition of the TE that I believe Mr. McCaleb referred to that you have in hand, Mr. Chairman, as an additional TE, I'd move approval.
Second. The only change, Mr. McCaleb, to what you may have in your hand is the fifth line down. We'd like to strike the words "if available." Is that agreeable?
Agreed.
Okay. We'll have this, Aubrey, read this into the record as a TE. It
Okay.
has to do with security.
Yeah, we talked about this.
Okay, so agreed. require that if the space is used for alcohol service or a drinking establishment, the occupier of the space must use a commercially available identification scanner that identifies patrons and also provides an incident tracking system or an equivalent service to provide identification checks for all individuals who enter the club. To accomplish this goal, the applicant will be utilizing Serval Data Systems / Serval Biometrics.
And that would become TE number 2.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And I am comfortable with that solution to the issue of concerns that are being raised. I would compliment the applicant. They've been very good about meeting with all interested parties, including the other patrons or the other stores and businesses in the mall, and I think they've done a really good job, not only of providing a wealth of information about what it is they're proposing, but about addressing concerns that have been raised.
It's nice to have a really detailed, complete application.
It is.
Where we have a clear, very clear idea of exactly what's going to occur.
Thank you.
Well, and just a bit of editorial comment on this application. This is for an ABC3, but they've had the foresight to put it in a SPUD, which is nice.
Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion in a second.
It's on the floor.
You're ahead of me. Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve item 11 with the addition of TE number 2. Cast your votes. And it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 12 is SPUD 802 to rezone 7621 South Penn from O2 to SPUD 802.
Good afternoon. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. What we have is a limited SPUD to allow around 8 uses. My client bought this property around 2 years ago. It is zoned O2 now. He refurbished the property, renovated the building, and tried to lease it. He spent over a year listing it with a broker, showing it to various proposed tenants, and each and every tenant needed some element of retail sales. So, after about a year and a half, we decided to move forward with this application to allow some limited commercial uses. We do maintain the O2 base. After we filed it, we did receive some protest, and my client has reached out to the neighbors and has modified it again since the protest letters came in. We took out the eating establishments, we took out the uses that we thought were uses that might create increased traffic. If you look at the area in which it's surrounded by, it's all intense commercial. There is residential to the west, and there's a current fence in place between this building and the residential to the west, but this was built as a commercial building. It was always intended to be some sort of office or commercial building. We do think with the modifications that we have made, it is an appropriate application. I think my client's good faith attempt for a year and a half to lease it to an office user shows that the market is demanding that this is some sort of commercial use. We think we've made appropriate limitations, and we would ask for your approval.
David, with the deletion of the uses that were offensive to the neighbors, I think that they were the alcohol eating establishments. Why do you need a SPUD? What's the, it's already zoned O2.
Because retail sales are not allowed within O2 zoning.
Because what?
Retail sales are not allowed within O2 zoning.
Okay, then that's the only one that you wanted to do.
That was my question. Which of these uses is not permitted in O2, besides the retail sales?
Well, I don't believe the grooming of animals would be allowed. I don't know that the payday or title loan agency would not be allowed, despite the fact that the historic use of this property has been for a payday loan. When you go to Google Earth, a little notation pops up that shows that this building is a check cashing place. So that's historic use of the property. And I believe, I defer to JJ, but I believe maybe the repair services and one of the personal services as well. But what we did was we tried to only include the non-O2 uses to be uses that wouldn't generate traffic. I mean, a grooming salon is not going to generate high traffic. A jewelry store or shoe repair store, which would fall under the repair services consumer, again, not going to create a lot of traffic. A travel agency, which is what personal services restricted is, wouldn't generate a lot of traffic. A spa or DMV, which is personal services general. So,
But my staff report doesn't show that those uses are, those categories are limited to those specific uses.
if you go to the city code, when you look up that use, it says typical uses include this.
Typical uses, but, and of course, that doesn't include the retail sales and services, which might very well generate a lot of traffic.
I wouldn't anticipate that it would. He has a prospective tenant that he's hopeful will sign that sells cell phones and service
But it's
plans.
not zoning, David.
But if you look at the, and I agree, but if you look at the area, there is heavy commercial, and the only true commercial type use is our retail sales, which we don't believe will generate an enormous amount of traffic. If you've driven by the site, the limitation is the building itself. It's a small building, so I don't think you could get something in that facility that would have a massive traffic impact.
Well, David, the other question I had on this is that because there are neighbors that have protested against this, we've got the, in the packet, would you agree, or your client agree to restrict the hours of operation from a certain time in the morning to a certain time in the evening?
I don't know that that's appropriate with a...
Well, the reason I'm asking is because some time ago we did an application for a Sonic drive-in. It's in my neighborhood on 23rd Street, and my error was not asking the question, how long are you going to be open? And that's open 24 hours a day, and cars and trucks are right behind these neighbors, and therefore whenever you do something like this and you have whatever these services are, retail sales services, I assume that could be video games. You can do that, and that would be nighttime, daytime, whatever there is. And I would like to see, before I'd approve this, some hours of operation, because you are right beside these neighbors just to the west.
Well,
in other words, I don't know that 24 hours a day, if that's what you're saying.
I don't know that I've ever seen retail limited by hours. And I understand, yes, if there was a drive-through or something like that that has a potential negative impact, it's certainly appropriate. Here, I don't think you have that. Mr. Chairman, are there people that have signed up?
No one has signed up.
Okay.
Excuse me, no one has signed up. I'm not aware whether someone is here that wants to address this or not.
I thought there were protests.
There are, and as I said, my client reached out to them, and this is modified from even after we modified the first time to address specific uses.
Yeah.
So I don't know that limiting retail is appropriate, because I don't think it generates the concern that you addressed. I'm not sure I've ever seen an application limit that use unit by hours.
My concern about this application is that it says that it is development in accordance with the regulations of O2, with some additional commercial. But it seems to me that, and I guess I don't really know the answer to some of these questions. My staff report tells me that the screening currently in place will be deemed in conformance. Would it be sufficient for a commercial use at this site? Do we know?
It's a solid and opaque screening between this lot and the residential, and it's a relatively new fence. So it's a
yes,
solid.
it would be?
I believe it would be, yes. Would that solid fence in place be deemed, is that conforming?
As long as it's site-proof between the two properties.
And then it says that the landscaping currently in place would be deemed in conformance. Would it meet commercial usage requirements currently?
I don't know exactly what the point system is.
I don't think it would, but if it were to be redeveloped, then it would.
Our problem is it's
just all non-conforming.
Yeah.
It says the same thing with respect to the signage, that the signage in place will be deemed to be in conformance. Would this really be in conformance with O2 requirements?
Well, here's the problem with the signage. It's actually smaller than O2 would allow. And so you guys are actually getting a heck of a deal here. It's about 4 feet, maybe.
Okay,
I'd be willing...
So it's smaller than would be allowed, even under O2?
Even under O2.
Okay.
My client would be willing to rip that out and go taller if it's your desire.
So then my last question has to do with the parking.
Yes.
Where are you in terms of meeting requirements like for a commercial use at this site?
Well, the parking is dictated by the use itself, and so we will have to, meet whatever the parking is based on the per square feet, requirement. And that in and of itself is why I'm not concerned about having a negative impact.
Because you've only got a certain amount
Correct.
available.
On a building this small, the parking requirement for retail and office would be the same.
Okay.
Nick, did you want to say something?
Well, just an observation. This is presently zoned O2. They're not coming back asking for C3 zoning. They filed an application originally with some C3 uses. There were protests. They met with the protesters, ironed those out, reduced their uses. It appears that they're going at the lowest level they possibly can go. Basically what we constantly encourage people to do, it appears they've done it, and now we're looking to find some fault with it. They've already met with the protesters and worked things out twice. They've limited their uses to half a dozen C3 uses, less than half a dozen real C3 uses. It's a very small building. I mean, it's not going to be a major commercial center, to say the least. Yes, I don't get it. Seems like appropriate use to me.
No one has signed up. Any other discussion?
I'll move approval of the application.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 12. Cast your votes. And it's approved.
Thank you.
Item 13, SPUD 806 to rezone 1601 North Sooner Road from R1 to SPUD 806.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Cindy Wright with Johnson & Associates, 1 East Sheridan. The proposal before you today is a request for approval of a temporary passenger rail service at this location off of Sooner Road. The lease for the property was approved by council back in November between Pullman Sleep Cars and the city Riverfront Redevelopment Authority. This is in response to that for the establishment of the use itself. The SPUD is for a period of 2 years. That would include the trial period of approximately 10 months to see if passenger rail service at this location was viable. Then the remainder of that would be the analysis and the determination of whether or not they wanted to pursue this site for a permanent site.
No one signed up?
Is this the first time we've ever limited an SPUD in a time?
No. I mean, this is for a passenger, like a train station, in effect. And it's a trial period.
And the only comment I would have for Cindy is this is the riverfront. It's supposed to be boats, not trains. But with that, I'd...
yeah, but it's on a train, it's on a rail line, so...
I'd move approval of the application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 13. Cast your votes, and it's approved. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Item 14, SPUD 807 to rezone 801 North Cemetery Road from AA to SPUD 807.
Good afternoon, Jason Spencer with Craft & Toll here on behalf of the applicant. What we've got here is an SPUD application to allow personal storage. It's on a 5-acre tract. It's located on the west side of Cemetery Road, just south of Northwest 10th Street. We're proposing 7 buildings and an office with that. There'll be a detention pond located on the west, providing a little bit further setback on that side. Staff's recommended for approval. We've agreed with all the TEs. We'd ask for your approval and be happy to answer any questions.
Chairman, I'd ask a question here on the staff report. I'm not sure. Did you mention something about setbacks? in your presentation. I have a little bit of hard of hearing.
Sorry. On the, talked about on the west, we're going to be proposing a detention pond, which gives a little further setback on that side. There's some large acre residential. I believe there's...
All right, but in the staff report, it reads setback standards for C3 zoning require a 15-foot setback from the building line when abutting a property zoned AA. The submitted plan shows no setbacks on the north or south side of the property.
That's correct. We're proposing...
But why not? Because I can see if you own the adjacent property, your building is right on my property line, and it seems to be, if this is going to be approved, I don't think it's compatible anyway, but you don't want to have that building butted right against some adjacent property owner. I can see why the setback standards for this, I can see why that would be, and I'm curious why it is that you guys didn't do that.
Sure. Well, what we've got on the north and south are churches, and we felt that putting the buildings on the property line provides a better screening. Basically, there will be no doors then facing them, those properties on the storage buildings. There will also be no drives on that side as well. So it utilizing the buildings to basically screen the property.
I think we ought to follow the standards that are required. And furthermore,
What will the surface be that will be visible from the churches, north and south?
It'll be a flat face with most likely stucco, some type of finish. I think we're looking at stucco on the outside of that then would have an earth tone to it. So it will be flat and not have exposed corrugated metal. And there's a TE that does state that we're in agreement with.
But they're built right on the property line.
Right.
And just one big blank wall.
Yep.
Yes.
No landscaping in front of it because you have no land.
Yes. And on the north, on the church's property, there are a large amount of evergreen trees already planted in a row right there. I know it's not on our property, but that will help to break some of that up.
Well, not by way of criticism, but I'm curious why the staff didn't put that in your technical evaluation list, that they didn't meet the setback requirements.
The code actually contemplates using mini storage on the property line as a screen and allows for that. You do have to vary the setback, and it's done fairly common in a lot of places. Instead of a stockade fence, you end up with what looks like a masonry wall on the property line.
We've done that before, but you've got either a subreg or whatever it is. It says whenever you've got C3 and AA, there's a 15-foot setback. Are you recommending that we amend that and allow that to happen?
Yes, the code contemplates that, as long as you vary the setback, which is what he's asking to do here, and use the back of the wall of the building in lieu of a stockade fence.
But I think that what Commissioner Gales is referring to is that there's no ability to landscape. You've got a flat well building, and you've got agricultural on both sides with maybe 5-acre tract houses, and you've got that wall of
There wouldn't be any
storage.
landscaping outside of the screening fence either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be in agreement with JJ. Is the fact that if he pulls this in 15 feet and puts a fence up, what's the difference? The difference is the fence is going to require a different amount of maintenance, in my opinion, a stockade fence over time versus a stucco finished wall. So, I mean, I think we did one of these, if memory serves me correct, on Southwest 104th, just east of Walker on the south side, where we actually did it abutting residential and a church, and we used the buildings as on the property line, and I thought that worked out really well because it was almost like a nicer fence than what was currently existing.
We've done it a lot. That's just one example.
Oh, you've been here longer than I have.
Don't remind me. No one signed up, Commissioners. Motion?
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 14. Cast your votes. And it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 15 is PUD 1570 to rezone 16500 Southwestern from AA to PUD 1570.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is Larry and Wayne Haswell and Kendall Dillon. We have a site here where we're fortunate that Western has been widened, and it is obviously the city's goal that we have some sort of commercial development here. So what we have done is tried to match some similar commercial PUDs that have been approved recently just north of here on Western. So we literally took the same uses that were approved on 134th and Western and put them in here. And the commission will remember there was a lot of discussion. When you look at it, it looks like a lot of uses, but when you dig into them, it's really not uses that we're concerned about. We took out the obnoxious uses, so to speak. Additionally, we've broken it into two tracks. On the south half, that being the track 2, my client will operate a retail sales with some landscaping materials. And so what we've done is we are going to put the retail building up front, and the storage of any of those materials, as you can see in the site plan, will be towards the back portion of the property. So it'll be effectively screened by what will be a nice brick or stone building on the front. You will notice there's an interesting element of this in that there's a notch out of the application that is not included in the application. The owners of that parcel did submit a letter in support, and they are, I believe, here today to voice their support for this application. With that, there are 3 TEs that I want to address real quick. Obviously, TE number 1, we are in agreement with. Number 3, we're in agreement with. And on number 2, we would ask that we be permitted 15-foot tall signs. That's what was approved on 134th and Western. When you look at what we're facing directly to the north of us, we've got it. Now, it's a PUD that allows 35-foot pole signs. My client is adamant that all of his signs are to be monument. He wants them to be brick and stone to match the rest of the buildings. But he does want the ability to have 15-foot signs to be at least competitive and consistent with what we've had previously approved on Western. One comment on the screening, when you look at track 1, this area was old. The pond has actually been dug out and increased. The pond actually comes through here, which is obviously going to be an amenity to the development, but we don't want to put a fence and screen through a pond. So track 1, we'd ask that the fence stop where this notch is, to allow that pond to be utilized by the future tenants and the folks that live to the east. I am not aware of any protest, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
David, you confused me a little bit.
Yep.
Started going through the TEs, and you immediately started talking about signage.
Yes.
And I don't see signage in the TE.
Number 2.
My number 2 says acceptance to the dedications of improvements. Never mind.
Let me weigh in on the signage. You mentioned that PUD 216,
yes,
adopted at the turn of the century, allows a 50-foot pole sign, whatever it does. I can probably almost guarantee that whomever comes in that tries to comply with PUD 216 is going to come in with PUD 1575 because that doesn't fit with what they're going to do. So your argument about that allows it to happen is empty. There's no sign competition anywhere that you're talking about in this whole area that I think your development is incompatible with the whole area. So 8-foot monument signs establish a precedent. That's what I would request you to do, and that's what people can see as they drive down Southwestern and Southwest 164th Street. They're going to see this whole huge commercial retail development and not miss anything if you have an 8-foot monument sign, tastefully landscaped. And so the argument that PUD 216 is an empty argument.
Let's do this. I'll concede that it's an empty argument. So let me take my next argument. The Commission and Council just approved within the last 12 months, just north of here, the 15-foot sign, a monument 15-foot signs. We went back and forth on the same debate that there's no.
I think I wasn't at that meeting.
I think you were. because we've had it about 17 times on that particular track.
David, a different aspect of the sign discussion.
Yes.
I mean, you just have in your PUD, in accordance with base zoning district regulations. Well, that begs the question of how many signs and where, as opposed to, I mean, I'm frankly on a tract with this much frontage, and maybe the number of potential uses or users, a 15-foot monument sign would not be a problem in my mind. Now, if you're going to have 11 of them as opposed to 3 of them or some other number, I'd be a little more concerned. So I'd like to know more about that.
Well, why don't we do this? In the past, what we've done is, at the specific plan stage, we'll come in with the sign package, but establish that they will be no more than 15 feet. That way you'll get your say at the number and location.
I'd rather know the number now.
No, there's a limit of 4 in the PUD currently.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, I missed that.
And that's
The
what
language is contradictory. That's what, I mean, but then down here, oh, okay. Attached and freestanding, a distinction. 4. Okay.
4 on total. Southwest 164th and west.
No.
4 total.
4 total.
That's what, no, it's going to say.
Total.
No matter where you are on 164th and west, it's 4.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. I sit corrected.
I do too.
I think that's fine. What other items, Commissioners? Where does the personal storage go? I see that as a use unit.
It would be in track 2.
So that would just be a part of the landscape operation?
Yes. One of the interesting features of this is my client actually owns and lives around this area to the east.
So we can say limited to track 2?
I believe so. Yes. That's what it's in the PUDs already.
Okay.
But
It did.
And does this require a specific plan to come in before you get a building permit and we get to see what they look like?
yes.
And that would be how the sign is constructed and what it is made of and all the building materials, et cetera, and
Well, the signs will be, per the PUD, they've got to be rock or stone consistent with the buildings.
but you would come in with a specific plan showing what the sign looks like and
Yeah, that'll be part of it.
everything related to this development.
Yes.
Okay.
And David, you're, the property owners that are in this little notch out here,
Yes, sir.
they're in agreement, they support your application, I'm presuming?
That's their letter right here, and they're here.
I realize that, I just want to see it.
You said head nod. It's to his hip. You just can't see it.
Just wasn't loaded.
Right.
Going to preserve some trees. You got some nice trees on that property.
Some of them will, obviously, some will have to be disturbed, but their goal, it is a nice open area, and with the way that pond works, it serves as an amenity to the development.
Move approval of the application.
You want on T number 2?
Revising T number 2 to be no more than 15 feet and a maximum of 4, which is stated in the PD.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item 15, modifying TE2 to 15-foot monument signs numbering 4. Cast your votes.
Thank you.
It's approved.
Item 16 is C6693, final plat of Jackson Creek 2, located east of Western Avenue and south of Northwest 164th.
Brandon Kuhn from Hewitt Zollers, 2832 West Wilshire, representing the applicant. I believe there are 5 TEs.
Excuse me 1 minute. Excuse me. David? We need quiet, please. Sorry, we didn't.
I believe there are 5 Ts, and we agree with them all. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And number 3 is a variance. And no one signed up, Commissioners. In fact, the room's empty.
The variance is simply, you're doing sewer and water, it's just...
Yeah, the sewer and water are both actually in south of that private road that we put in.
Move variance.
We have a motion and second to approve the variance to TE3. Cast your votes. That's approved.
Move approval of the application.
And item 16 is approved. Thank you.
The remaining items are continued. So that was our last case.
Okay, we don't have any Planning Commission committees. Planning Commissioners, anything?
I wanted to let you all know, to the extent that I'm able to do so, that the project along Western Avenue, if any of you have driven down Western Avenue lately, you know what a joyful experience it is. But the project to upgrade the streetscape is moving forward. Relevant portion being between, last time I saw, 41st Street and about 45th Street, I believe. One of those things has occurred where the construction process has kind of gotten cart before the horse kind of thing. We haven't actually seen the final plan. I don't even know exactly what the final plan will be, but they seem to be ready to break ground. So sometime between now and the next time I see you, hopefully I'll have a final plan. And if we don't have a formal presentation here, I'll at least be able to kind of inform you about what it is that's being done out there. The fact that we're not having a formal presentation is something that is kind of curious to me, and I need to talk a little bit more with staff about what that process is. I think the Planning Commission actually, Project 180 notwithstanding, is supposed to have some authority and input over those kinds of projects, and why we don't more often, I don't know. But I will hopefully be able to give you a more detailed update the next time I see you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Is there a possibility I could have another 3-ring binder? This is bent, and all the pages are
We'll have to charge $25.
Yeah, I'll pay $25 because this is going to fall apart.
I actually just had a note to get John a new binder, and I will get you one too. Does anybody else need a new binder?
This is real old.
We'll get everybody new binders, I think.
Yeah. I chew on mine is the problem.
Todd's looks a little bit
I
fatty
think
too.
they ought to buy their own. I bought mine.
Planning Department?
I would just like to thank everybody who came out to our Plan OKC open house. And we are still open for public review and comment of the draft comprehensive plan. So I'd just like to encourage people to go to planokc.org website, and there's a link. You can view the plan. You can provide your comments at any section of the plan, and down to the detail of a single word with the software that's out there. And we also have our plans at public libraries with written comment cards you can give to anybody that works on the staff in the public libraries, and we'll be collecting those. And it'll be open through March. So I'd like to encourage everybody who didn't get a chance to come to the open house to know that period is still open for several more weeks.
Do I get credit for watching it on Channel 20?
I'd like to ask our attorney a question. Do you know, are you familiar with the agreement between Oklahoma City and Edmond with utilities? No. You're not? Yeah, you.
I'm not aware of them, but I wouldn't necessarily be aware of them. I don't deal with utilities.
Who would deal with that?
In our office would be Craig Keith.
Is there some way we can find that out?
Sure.
And
Look into that.
yeah, because I understand that it's pretty. I mean, it's just if you need water, you need sewer. If it's available, they've already got an agreement worked out, and they just go ahead and do it.
Don't know. Development Services. Municipal counselor. And there's nobody from the public, so we're adjourned. Took a lot longer than I thought today.